Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This week's video focuses on why dieting doesn't work and what you can do instead. I know it's a little touchy subject, but it's a very necessary subject, and so I wanted to put it out there. But before I get into that, just a quick introduction for those of you who are new here. My name is Chaitni. I am a health coach and nutritionist. I help clients cope with stress and weight balance through healthy habit formation, positive lifestyle changes, and proper nutrition practices like mindful and intuitive eating practices. So if you enjoy this video, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. There's a video that comes out every couple of weeks and it's associated with some kind of wellness topic. If you're more of a reader, you can sign up for my blog. The link for that will be in the description. And I spend a lot of time talking about personal experiences that lead to self-love and better self-care practices. Lastly, you can follow me on Instagram at Imperfect Bodies by C. Modi. So without further ado, let's get into this week's topic. So the first part of this is why dieting doesn't work. You know, if you've ever been on any kind of diet, you know that it comes with a lot of restrictions, it comes with a lot of guilt, and it comes with a lot of shame, and it's never sustainable. There's always an expiration date to it. You know, you cannot spend the rest of your life dieting in whichever form that you've chosen to diet. So dieting is very tricky. It's almost like this vortex, you know, it's this dark hole that sucks you in, and that's when you start to have a very different relationship with food, and you start to have a very different relationship with yourself. So there are many reasons why dieting doesn't work, and the number one reason is it is too restrictive. You know, typically with dieting, you are cutting out certain food groups. You're cutting out carbs, you're completely cutting out fats. And that is just not possible unless all you're doing is dieting, you know, but you have other responsibilities. You are juggling work, you are juggling family, you are juggling social connections and, you know, social time spent with friends and family. So how do you manage this dieting when you're in that kind of group environment? So it's not necessarily practical, and it's definitely way too restrictive. And what that does is it leaves you feeling deprived. So, you know, for instance, let's say it's pizza day at work, pizza is being served for lunch. You are on a no pizza diet, and you know, you're good, you don't eat the pizza, you just have the salad or whatever it is that you brought from home. But a lot of times what's going to happen is this will lead to binge snacking later in the day because it left you feeling deprived. So one of the biggest reasons why diets don't work is because they're too restrictive. The number two reason, which we're all a part of, it's part of this diet culture, sadly, is labeling food as good or bad. When you start to consider certain foods as good or certain foods as bad, you automatically link it to any kind of shame and any kind of guilt that you may experience. So for example, when you do indulge in whatever is on your bad list, you end up feeling guilty and you end up feeling ashamed for making that choice and not having enough willpower to stay away from it. So just as an example, you know, you've had a really stressful day and you decide to indulge in a bar of chocolate. You have it, but the entire time you're thinking, I should not be having this, I should not be having this, this is not good for me, why don't I have more willpower, you know, why am I not able to make a better job of this, why am I making this choice? So, and once you're done eating it, you end up feeling really guilty for giving in and enjoying that bar of chocolate. So you've not only robbed yourself of enjoying chocolate, but you've also then made the situation worse by beating yourself up for actually having the chocolate. So this whole good versus bad mentality can really damage your relationship with food, and it can really damage your relationship with yourself as well as your body image. You know, number three is diets don't address the root problem. It's more than calorie counting. It's more than just, you know, calories in versus calories out. A lot of times it doesn't answer the question of why. You know, why are you overeating, or why are you choosing certain foods over others? And it doesn't take into account your lifestyle. It doesn't take into account your stress levels. You know, if you're somebody who's working really long hours and not getting enough sleep, guess what? That's going to mess with your hunger hormones. You are automatically going to feel more hungry. You're going to have cravings, and cravings are typically for things that are full of unhealthy carbs. So that is just science. It's just biology. It's how your brain and your body function. So you have to take into account all of these other factors that contribute to your eating habits and your eating choices. And when it comes to dieting, that doesn't happen. You know, you've just laid out this really restrictive plan and you follow it no matter what, without taking into consideration what is actually contributing to your current lifestyle. Number 4, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, is diets are not really practical for the long term. You know, they're not realistic for long-term success, because I mean, where all are you going to travel with your little food scale, your weighing scale? You know, for the rest of your life, you can't constantly keep weighing the food to see what you're taking in or what you're consuming. And you know, when you're really restrictive, let's say you're on a vacation, what are you going to eat? I mean, how much protein powder could you possibly take with you? So it is just not practical for the long term. And you know, yeah, if you want to do it for a temporary time frame, it's going to work, but then it's going to turn into a crash diet. And it's not something that's practical, that's sustainable, that's something that you actually want to do for the long term. So that's a big part of diets, is they are not very realistic or practical. And then number 5, and this is a really big one, also associated with number 3, is diets don't take into account your emotional and mental state. You know, if you're dealing with any kind of trauma, or if you do end up stress eating, or if you are eating your feelings and there's emotional eating involved, you know, there needs to be other resources to help you with that. Dieting is not going to work, because at that point, food is meeting a need of yours that is unmet. And in those situations, there are other things that you need to do, where how do you learn to de-stress on a consistent basis? You know, if there is some trauma that's driving the emotional eating, then let's address that trauma. You know, that's something that needs to happen with a professional. And along with that, you can start to make some dietary changes, or really, you know, start to make some more mindful choices, and start to practice some more of that mindful and intuitive eating. So it's changing that whole mindset. It's changing those limiting beliefs. It's changing the lies that you've told yourself, which are just, they're absolutely not true. So dieting is not going to address that. It's just going to, again, be something that tells you, eat this, not that, eat it at this time, eat this much, not this much. And that's it. You know, again, where is the emotional side of it? Where is the mental side of it? And you are a whole person. You are not just your diet and exercise, like I always say. Okay, so I've given you all the reasons why diets don't work. Now let me help you with some of this. So what does work? Well, number one of the things that you can try is the 80-20 rule. It's very simple, is you try to eat healthy 80% of the time, or you just try to make better choices 80% of the time, and 20% of the time you enjoy whatever you want guilt-free. So for example, if you really like biryani, right? You have the biryani, and if that is what you're indulging in, go for it. But maybe you add a side of veggies to it. And that way you automatically minimize the portion of biryani. So maybe you have more veggies first, and maybe you you know, cut out a drink with it. Like if you end up having soda or any kind of alcoholic beverage with it, maybe you skip that and you just enjoy the biryani. Something else that you do is, you know, 80% of the time, which is maybe during the week when you come home, you try to stick to healthy options. And then on the weekends when you're out with friends, or when you have any kind of, you know, social visits, or any kind of social obligations, you indulge and make that your 20%. So that 80-20 rule is something that's doable. It's practical. It can be applied anywhere, you know, whether you're busy with work, or whether you're traveling and you're on vacation, or even if you're traveling for work. It is something that you can actually manage. It's not impossible to do. You just have to figure out what your 80% is and what your 20% is. And something else, kind of a subtext with this, is, you know, what you're doing is following crowding out. And this is something I've talked about a lot if you've seen any of my videos. Crowding out is not about eliminating what you would like to eat. It's really about adding what is actually nourishing to your body. And, you know, let's say it is dessert. You know, there's some kind of chocolate cake that you really like. Instead of just going gung-ho with that chocolate cake, maybe you have a little bit of protein first. Maybe you add a side of, you know, a salad first. You have that, and then you still have the chocolate cake. Typically what you'll notice is one good decision leads to other good decisions. So you may not even have the chocolate cake. If you have it, you'll end up having less of it because you've already filled up with some of these other more nourishing options. So when you build these healthier habits, you have that 80-20 rule. You also have this whole concept of crowding out. And that way it doesn't leave you feeling like you're completely depriving yourself and it's too restrictive. You're still getting to do what you want to do, but you're also starting to slowly change some of those habits and starting to influence and introduce foods that are really good for you. Number 2 is eating mindfully. You knew I was going to say that. And the best thing that you can do when it comes to eating mindfully is eating slowly. Most of us inhale our food. We rarely even savor it, appreciate it, and fully connect with the food that we're eating. We just eat it to get it over with a lot of times. And what happens in the process is you eat too much too quickly, and the next thing you know is you've actually overeaten. There's a lag time between your gut and your brain, so your brain doesn't realize you're full until a good 20 minutes later. So 20 minutes might be too long for some of us to slow down our eating to 20 minutes, especially if you've only been taking 5 minutes to eat your food. So just add another minute, and then add another minute and add another minute, and slowly work your way up to 20 minutes. But even if you're at 5 minutes, just add 1 more minute to your meal and then slowly add to that. Eating slowly is, it is the most effective way to weight balance, to stress management when it comes to food. It is a complete game changer. So it's one of those things that can not only change your relationship with food, but it can also just change the relationship with yourself, of being more present and more mindful. So eating slowly is a huge part of eating mindfully. Something else that goes along with eating mindfully, which is something we don't do often, is checking in with yourself. Are you eating because you are hungry, or are you eating because you're bored, because you're lonely, because you're stressed, because you're tired, because you're angry, because of so many other reasons except for hunger. A lot of times we confuse thirst and hunger as well. So what is it? Why are you actually reaching out for food? Is it physical hunger, or is it something else? So get into the habit of asking yourself that question, especially when it's odd hours of the day, or when you notice these patterns. Let's say every day when you come back from work, the first thing you do is reach for something that isn't necessarily nourishing. Why are you doing that? Are you doing that because you're hungry, or are you doing that because you've had a really stressful day and finally you can take a break and be home? So ask yourself that question. It's one question and it's really simple. Am I eating because I'm hungry, or am I eating for another reason? And when you start to discover that it's not hunger and it's that other reason, that's when you can start to come up with some of these other healthier coping mechanisms besides food to help you feel better. Number 3 is tackle stress proactively. A lot of times when it's too late and we're at a point of burnout, well, it's actually never too late, but when you're at a point of burnout, that's when you decide, okay, I'm going to start meditating, I'm going to start practicing mindfulness, I'm going to start going to yoga classes. And you are so paralyzed by that point and so overwhelmed that nothing happens. So make it a part of your routine, even if it's doing breath work for 5 minutes a day before you go to bed or right when you wake up. Or maybe it's any other kind of ritual. Maybe it's just a few stretches that you do every single day. Really basic stretches that only take 10 minutes. If you're exercising, that's great. Make it a part of your routine. It shouldn't be a one-off where you go maybe once a week, or maybe you go a few times a month. No, how can you do maybe even just 15 minutes of it 4 or 5 days a week? Or one of the best ways to de-stress is to go on a walk. How can you make walking a part of your routine? For some people, the loneliness is so stressful. So how do you start to put yourself out there? How do you start to feel like you belong and socially you're connecting with others? So you have to start to figure out ways to de-stress on a regular basis. This is not something that can happen just when it gets really hard to tackle. The next one, number 4, is something that we all take for granted, and that is sleep. When you sleep better, you feel better, and you make better food choices. So if you are not getting anywhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep, it's an issue. It is going to interfere with the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act. So sleep is extremely important. I'm not here to tell you cut out the screen time. You already know that. You know it helps to have a sleep ritual. But the one thing I will tell you that can really help is to wake up at the same time every single day, regardless of whether it's Monday or it's Saturday morning. So even if you go out Friday night, you're out partying, you go to bed late, no matter what, wake up at that same time Saturday morning. If you want to take a nap during the day. But having that one consistent time when you wake up all 7 days a week can really, really help you with your sleep management. Eventually, you get to a point where you start to hit the bed at a certain time, no matter what. You're not tempted to stay up late. You're not tempted to binge watch that show. You're not tempted to be out late partying, because your body cannot sustain that. So you automatically start to go to bed at that same time, and you start to wake up at the same time. And again, with that consistency comes better choices that you make with food, as well as yourself throughout the day. So not just food, even with whether you choose to exercise or how you move your body and how you regulate your emotions. So there is just no substitute for sleep. Make sure you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep on any given night. At the same time, if there are nights when you are going to go to bed really late, try to keep that wake up time consistent. And eventually going to bed late is going to move up, and you'll still be able to get your 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And lastly, plan for comfort foods. If you enjoy chocolate, or if you enjoy spaghetti, in my case, whatever it is that you want, keep some of it around. You don't have to completely deprive yourself of it. Or when you enjoy it, fully enjoy it. Don't end up then feeling guilty or feeling ashamed for what you did. So maybe instead of having, a massive bag of Cheetos, maybe you just keep a small bag of Cheetos, or that's all you eat. And that way it hits the spot and you haven't fully denied yourself. So the reason I chose Cheetos is because that's my weakness. So when you completely eliminate what you enjoy, it just is going to leave you feeling like you're constantly wanting it. You're constantly thinking of it, and you constantly want to reach for it, but you can't have it. And that's not a wonderful feeling. So do it, have that comfort food, have it in moderation in whatever way makes sense for you. Maybe keeping it in the house is not ideal. Maybe it's going out and enjoying it once in a while, or maybe it's enjoying it with certain company. So however it makes sense to you, do it, but don't completely eliminate it from your diet. And that way you'll be able to manage your cravings a lot better. So I've given you a bunch of different options. You can put at least one of them into practice. I think the best one to go for is however long you're taking to eat, just add another minute to it and start to build on it. Just make sure that none of this happens overnight. There's no need to go for perfection. You don't need to automatically go from 5 minutes of eating time to 20 minutes. It's okay, take your time, because in the time that you take to go from 5 to 20, you will start to discover what works for you, what doesn't, and how to make things work for you. And that discovery is really key to then being able to sustain the change that you're trying to make. So go for progress, not for perfection. Start with something small, start with something that feels easy, start with something that is actually doable given your current lifestyle, and then go ahead and start to add to that. So I hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions or any comments, just drop me a message or two. And as always, thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I will catch you here very soon. Thanks so much. Bye.